In this movie, we're going to look at how to work more with light. There's a lot more to controlling light than just diffusing it. Blocking light is also an important skill in cinematography. Part of lighting is deciding what gets lit and what doesn't get lit. To block light, we often use something called a flag. This is kind of like the silks we looked at earlier, except that flags are meant to block light completely. This is helpful if your light is light in the background or spilling onto something else. Now, here's a good example. In this test with Bitsy, while we were setting up the backlight, the light was spilling onto the background. Now, because it was spilling onto the background, it reduced the contrast between the background and her backlight. So, my trusty assistant Elijah Teagues set up a flag on a C-stand to block the light so that it doesn't shine on the background behind her. Now, this keeps the light on her, but darkens the background. This makes it so that the backlight really makes her pop. We had a similar issue later on in this shoot when we were setting up for the film noir style shoot. In this case, though, it was enough to use the barn doors. Barn doors are these little folding panels that are often found in the front of some lights. By folding them in, you can block light from hitting the background, the top of the background in this case. Flagging can also be done by using other tools such as black wrap, which is kind of like a really thick aluminum foil, or with a material called duvetine, which is a thick black fabric. Now, both of these materials are heat resistant, so they work well in cinematography. And if you can't find or afford any of these materials, you could just use a whiteboard or a piece of cardboard, anything. Just make sure to keep these materials away from the light so you don't start any fires. I know I sound like a broken record on this, but fires happen all the time on film sets. Now, note that hard light is really directional, so it can be shaped like this. Flagging a light or closing the barn doors, these things make a big difference with hard light sources, but with soft light, the light rays are less direct and usually kind of just bouncing around all over the place. So blocking hard light makes a more dramatic difference than it does with soft light. With hard light, you can create some very interesting shapes, as we'll see later when we look at how to create that old film noir look. In addition to blocking light, we often bounce light. This means that instead of shining a light on the subject directly, we shine the light on another surface which reflects light back onto our subject. This has a tendency to soften the light and reduce its strength a little bit. And depending on the reflecting surface, this can also look a lot less sourcey than direct light does. Bouncing light is great if you're short on crew or if you're in a tight space. It also works well for creating fill. In this case here, we lit Bitsy only with the backlight. And we wanted some fill, but instead of setting up a new light to create some fill, we just used a bounce board to reflect some of that backlight back onto her face. So it's technically a 1-point lighting setup, but we are turning it into a 2-point lighting scenario because of the bounce. Note that if you don't have a bounce board, you can use a cheap reflector or white poster board, basically any bright surface that reflects light. For a really strong reflection, you can even use a mirrored surface. Now, you might have noticed Elijah bouncing the light and then not bouncing the light. This is called auditioning. Here we see our PA Joel auditioning a flag. Auditioning shows the DP or gaffer what the shot looks like before and after an adjustment. Shaping light can take a while. You have to get the flags out, getting a spare C-stand, setting all that stuff up. It can definitely take some time. Sometimes that's not worth the effort. So often when you have a good crew like we did, when there's a spare minute, they'll get out flags and diffusion and C-stands and set all that stuff up so it's just ready to go when needed. Best Boy Electric Daniel Mamura is doing that here as we were getting ready for our big night shoot. If we speed up the time a little bit, you can tell that we didn't need this for anything. He was just thinking ahead and being prepared. Sometimes if we're in a hurry, we might have someone Hollywood a flag in the shot. To Hollywood something means to just stand there and hold it. In this shot, Heather Hollywoods a flag in front of a light. Rumor has it that this is called Hollywooding because Hollywood budgets are usually large enough to pay people to be human light stands. We'll continue to look at flagging, shaping, and bouncing light as we go through this training course. These are really essential techniques in being a versatile cinematographer.